Hey, everybody. Welcome to the program. Listen, I've got somebody very special to talk with today. We've had a lot of outreach from people saying that they had something to add. There was another case, a very famous case of a shooting that happened that was really brutal, killed a lot of people, and it was really poorly investigated. So there was the equivalent of a citizen's investigation around that as well. And of course, I'm talking about the Las Vegas shooting, allegedly by one guy with a bump stock hitting people multiple times. So we're talking today with Nephi Khaliki, and he was instrumental in that. So Nephi, hey, good to talk to you. Take people through that if you could. Give us the introduction. Who are you, and why are we talking?
Well, I, like a lot of people, have, major questions, but as somebody from Las Vegas who very recently went through a traumatic attack on our community, and we weren't getting answers from anybody, not any that made sense, myself and a few other former private investigators decided we were going to look into matters on our own. And we provided a report for the attorneys that were representing the victims of 1 October. And our report was instrumental in getting an $800 million settlement for the victims of 1 October. So when the thing happened with an attempted assassination on Trump, there were some very similar profiles in what happened, in questioning whether there was one shooter or two shooters. And so I reverted to a lot of the old skill sets that I had honed in on with the 1 October investigation. And there's a lot of similarities. And, we still don't have answers in Las Vegas about, what happened. And there's some colossal failures on that part. And I'm just starting to think that these colossal failures, it's easier to take the rap for being incompetent than it is to be involved. And I think they can just keep doing it so many times that citizens are going to have to start taking responsibility for our own protection, and even if our government doesn't want to give it. So that's how I wound up, getting involved in this. My background, I started out in my 20s as a private investigator, tracking down cheating wives and runaway kids and stuff, and I got into bounty hunting. I did that for 6 years, and then I shifted my skill sets over to political ops. And I've been a defensive firearms instructor. I'm an expert marksman. I've done a lot of training for people. I owned Las Vegas gunfights. We did full contact gunfight stuff. So this is all kind of in my space, and nobody's asking me to do it. It'd be nice, but I don't think the people that are being asked are going to be telling the truth. So I think when I saw your post, I posted, I think, on the 17th, my analysis, and then somebody sent me a text message with a picture of your post and said, "Isn't it nice when your peers agree with you that your independent research has come up with the same conclusion?" That's what happened with 1 October. Is myself and another individual named Eddie Schmitz, who's now living in Florida, we both did this independently. Then we put our research together, and we both came up with the same exact conclusion. And the most significant one with that one was that Steve Paddock was dead at 3:45 in the afternoon, when the shooting started at like 10 o'clock at night. So I want to be able to have that same synergy. And I think, my perspective in the tactics and reverse engineering some of that stuff would be helpful for people, because it's not just one individual out there. And I think you and I both have the same objective, and that is to get to the truth. So I am excited to work on this with you.
Well, I like this. I love this too. And the other thing, the reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you, because it seemed like you took the same approach I do. I'm just a data guy. You have to be data. Yeah. People are coming at me like, well, what would the motive be? And I don't care.
Not yet. Bullets, we can't care yet. Yeah.
And audio, right? That's all we got. And we've seen already, I don't know if you saw, but Eli Crane took this video in that second floor room, right? And he just posted it up, just a minute-long video, and he swings around the camera. He's looking at it, and he says, you see that? This is how close a shot it was. And you know what I saw? Every piece of the stands had already been dismantled. The FBI let that whole crime scene be torn down completely. We saw that FBI guy hosing the roof down on the second day, right? This is not how crime scenes are supposed to be run, because you want to know, Nephi,
that's
the one
called
thing
a cleanup crew.
That's what it is. So, because I wanted this one thing, like we're going to have to laboriously rebuild how high were the stands and which stands did they use, and can we contact the stand manufacturers or the company that rented them? Because what I wanted to do, we saw that first shot, nicks his ear, and it bounces off a railing. Beautiful. Leave the stadium, leave the thing. I want to get up there with a little laser pointer, and I want to put it on that railing, and I want to get a 6'3" guy standing in that spot, and I want to put it right past his ear, and I want to look down that line. Because if I look down that line, I'm going to see
You're
right where that shot came from.
You're going to look in that window. Yeah.
I might be looking in a window.
How convenient. So I think the first thing, I'm on social media a lot, and I think the first thing, by the way, because of what I did 1 October, and because I so vehemently questioned the official narrative, man, they've been messing with me ever since. And what do I got to do now but just continue doing it, because I'm not going to make any friends anyway. So telling the truth, man, it's hard. They've attacked me. They've arrested me. They've done all kinds of things to try and stop me from arming people who have a right to do it. So that caveat being said, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to say the truth, and if somebody doesn't like it, a former friend of mine is a SWAT commander for Metro, said, do what is right, let the consequence follow. And that's what I intend to do with this. And I have mad respect for the courage it takes to do that. And I recognize completely the sacrifice that you're also making personally to tell the truth. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thanks for recognizing that. So what are the similarities between what we just saw and 1 October, which is what you're calling the Las Vegas, the Roadhouse shooting?
Yeah, the similarities, we had an elevated shooter, allegedly, that was firing down about 1,000 feet away. And what people don't know is why I'm probably one of the most important people to talk to about what happened in Mandalay Bay is I ran all shooting operations on the Strip in Vegas for 10 years. Ironically, I was shooting all the pigeons on the casinos, and they paid me millions of dollars to keep pigeons off the Strip. So as far as shooting angles, there's nobody on earth with more experience with angles. I've shot more than 250,000 rounds on the Strip in 10 years. Mandalay Bay was one of my key properties. So the area, which is the fountains in Vegas or in Mandalay Bay, it's a jungle. And there are 3 decorative structures that are not guarded because they're just styrofoam and concrete. They're in the middle of that jungle. When we used to go into that area, we had to call security and let them know we're going in there because the eye in the sky couldn't see through the foliage. So we had to tell them, but you can walk right up from the street. There's a bus stop right there. You can just climb up there and nobody even know you're in there. I have footage and I'll put it up when we put the video out of me shooting from the place that overlooked that festival. Well, up at the 32nd floor, you have Stephen Paddock who's allegedly firing out of 2 different holes at the same time. But right below it is also another vantage point. And that vantage point overlooks the same target, but it also has similar trajectories. The key to that was a piece of audio that came from a cab driver who was parked under the porte cochere, and she starts to hear shooting. And the first one is muted. Well, if you know that area, you know right above you it's a road, and it's concrete and steel. So, of course, it's going to block some of the sound. And then all of a sudden there's these loud bang, bang, bang that could only have come from her left, which is that fountain area. Now, if I was looking to escape, I'd shoot from there, hop in a car on the strip, and I'd be out of there. So the similarities between there's one shooter or two shooters, that was the immediate parallel that I drew when I was questioning this, because the difficulty that there was in doing what you and I are doing with the audio footprint is that in Vegas, there was a lot of chaos in the shooting. And from an audio footprint to analyze that and separate it, it was very difficult. So, and then you had multiple sources, none of which were at the point like we have with Trump. We're blessed to have the audio that we have because the microphone is marking where the target was. A lot of these cameras, when you're shooting randomly, the source changes from this point to that point to this point to that point, makes our job very difficult. This one is clean, with the exception of the tail end of the shooting patterns, which is a little chaotic, but we got enough of a sample to establish some very clear facts. And that is that there were more than one weapon being fired at least 3 to 4 different distances. And I think the important thing for us to first clear up for the public is that the first shots that were fired at Trump were clean. So I look at things in firing patterns, and then actually when I'm training people on handgun defense, I encourage them to select a firing pattern because it helps keep rhythm, it helps keep order, it helps keep your head together, helps you deal with stress and the muscle memory of, like for me, using triplets, which is boom, 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 right? That is different than someone who would do eighth notes, which is boom, boom, reassess, boom, boom, right? This is a firing pattern. You see that evidence in the first 3 shots. If I'm imagining myself on the scope, which I spent 10 years behind a scope, that first shot was taken, boom, there was an assessment that they missed, but the target was still available, so they did 2 quick shots behind it. And then Trump disappears from sight. And a professional, of course, stops shooting when the target's not available anymore. But then there's a panic. Why shoot? The guy's down, he's being covered. Why shoot anymore? Then there's some chaotic shots that don't contain the same kind of rhythmic pattern of somebody that's controlled and trained and experienced, right? Somebody who knows how to keep their nerves down, right? That's not a first-time thing. You're going to be a first-time shooter, you're going to be scared to death. And you're going to be nervous, and it's going to reflect in the pattern of your shooting. That was my first indication. That's 2 independent shooters right there. And then at the tail end of it, you hear, a singular shot that sounds like the sniper ending it. That question led to other questions, and unfortunately, I don't have the ability to not follow it through all the way to the end. So when I measured the shot, so just to explain this and agree with me, please, on this, or disagree with me if I'm...
But before we go on, let me just establish one thing very quickly,
yes.
Because this is what, so it happens on the 13th. First off, I hate what I'm seeing because they stood him up and walked him off the stage, even though they couldn't possibly have known if there was more than one shooter out there, right? So that bothered me. It just was like, what is happening here? It felt really off. But this is on the next morning, so on the 14th, CNN even runs this and says, oh, hey, look at this. We're seeing here that the first 3 shots were consistent with alleged weapon A. The next 5 were consistent with alleged weapon B. And the final acoustic impulse was emitted by a possible weapon C per audio analysis by Cataline Grigoris, director of the National Center for Media Forensics at the University of Colorado in Denver, and Cole Whitecotton, senior professional research associate at the same institution. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, this is really big news, and I'm waiting for somebody to follow up on it, and that is the last you ever hear about that. in the
That's
news,
why you and I need to do this. Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, I got to look into this now, because that bothers me when a professional comes out and says 3 + 5 + 1. And by the way, that tells me they were using Trump's microphone feed, because you can count those there. But I will tell you that using Using citizen cell phones that were backed by the AGR complex, we have to add one more shot into the mix. And that's okay, because that's consistent with the idea that Secret Service snipers took a shot, as well as an emergency services unit, that's the Beaver County sniper, took a shot. So that was 2, plus the other 3 plus 5. 3 plus 5 plus 2 is 8. So I just want to be very clear. We're talking about 10 shots, and we have to account for every single one of them, because that's what a proper investigation does. So thank you. Keep going.
So to explain this so people understand the basic premise of audio forensics, when you're trying to reverse engineer how far away a shot was from the person hearing it, you have the 3 reports, right? You have your shot going off. That's where the hammer strikes the primer and goes boom and ignites the bullet. Then the bullet leaves the chamber and it breaks the sound barrier, and then there's a crack. Then there's the sound of it hitting something, which could be soft flesh or could just go off into the distance. But the first 2 are important because the distance between those 2 peaks in an audio waveform is how far away that shot was from the person hearing it. That's why it's so important to have Trump's microphone, because he was the target. So we can specifically, now the reason we haven't contradicted with a similar range is we know is because we have a reference point. We know where the shooter was, and that gave us a reference point, and that was about 449 feet away. That we now know that, okay, what are the other shots? Were they greater or less than that? And that would tell you where those generally were. We don't know the round yet that was used, whether it was 1,800 feet per second or if it was, some kind of plus P round. And so until we have that data, we can't really plug that model in precisely.
Why do you have such a low speed? I have a typical speed for a 223 at clocking in at 2,600.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant 28, but it depends. Yep. We just don't know that number definitively yet. We do know he went and bought a box of ammo that day. We just don't know what that was yet. So That's why I haven't chimed in on what I think it is specifically and reverse engineered that math. But we don't necessarily need that to establish the fact that there were 2 distinct firing volleys we call volley 1 and volley 2. Now, it's important for people to understand that if this is some shenanigans going on, meaning that there was a concerted effort to assassinate Trump, the first shooter would be the professional. Because as soon as you start firing, people start moving around and targets become even harder to hit. So the first one has to be the professional. That's the shot pattern that you and I came up with, that the first group was the longest distance away. Then there's a pause. People are screaming, going crazy. People are running onto Trump. And then the second volley happens, which was pointless as it wouldn't have hit him. Think about the personalities. So, 1 second. Think about the personalities between a professional and that punk kid, right? They match. A professional matches the first group. An inexperienced kid firing blankly into the crowd matches what you'd find from an inexperienced person.
All right, so we'll see if the evidence matches that, because finally we got a video from the roof with 2 Secret Service guys and a couple ESU guys standing around. We finally got some video of that roof, and we can see stuff. So as of the time of this recording, I still have 0 definitive proof that Crooks fired even a single round. I'm going to guess he did, but the way I work, Nephi, is I need to know that that's true. Did he have powder residue on his hand? Can we show that there were like 3 left in the magazine and there's 8 missing from the box, or whatever the story is, right? We just need to know. But it was interesting because they scanned all around, and the one thing I was looking for, is there any brass on the ground?
Yeah.
Casings. I didn't see any casings on the ground. We can get back to that in just a second, but this is what you're talking about. So what we're seeing here is, let me supersize this, and I'll get my little drawing tool up. So these are the first 3 shots right here. So if we can just establish this, make sure everybody watching this understands. This is the supersonic crack. So this, I'm calling that the bullet. So the bullet comes over the microphone and snaps. And then 0.22 seconds later, we get the thump out here, which is the report from the gun. Like you said, the bullet goes out. It's supersonic, so that means it's traveling faster than the speed of sound. So it gets there first. It's the hare in this race. The tortoise is the black thing, the report. Right. And then we have our second shot, crack, thump. Then we have our third shot, crack, thump, right? So those are the first 3 shots, and they sound like this. Oh, if I could turn my rookie mistake. Hang on 1 second. That should be playing. All right. See if you can hear this at all. You hear that?
Yes. You know what's interesting, if you match it up with the video, Chris, remember that supersonic rounds, you get hit before you hear it, right? Because it's going faster than sound. The shot goes off. We hear it because we're watching it on tape. Trump grabs his ear, and then you hear the report. So now that's how I knew it was supersonic rounds. But the important thing for people to take away from what you just put on the screen is that each of those being the exact same, what I call click boom, and being the same time, that means it all came from the same gun at the same distance. So that's shooter number 1. Now, if you want to bring up the second group, and I believe if the first half of it is where we can identify that second one.
Yeah, give me 1 second. So the second grouping gets a little messy off of Trump's mic.
Yes.
So here I don't want to confuse people, but I can make this really clear. So if we said we had shots 1, 2, 3, that's in group 1. But if we keep numbering them in the next group of 5, those would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So we're up to 8. Now, here's what I get from off of Trump's mic again. And what we have here is this is the bullet. This is the report. It's 0.212 seconds. I mean, it's just a little bit different. It's 0.213 now. It's a little bit different, the bullet and the report. It gets messy after here, and it would take a lot of explaining. But those first 2 in the group of 5, I'm going to suggest the group of 5 is one gun.
They're the same.
Because they all sound the same. They have the same time. But the thing you're pointing out is they have a slightly different time signature. It's not 0.22 anymore. Nephi, is it important that 0.212, 0.22, isn't this is close enough for this kind of work, isn't it?
Abso-freaking-lutely. And what that means is that second shooter was not on top of, but close. Now, this brings up an interesting thing. We definitely need to address this. I don't know if we're ready to go full into it, but it dispels the idea that it came from the tower, because remember, the hypotenuse, the longest side of a triangle, adds to the distance. It's not as the crow flies. You add elevation and it adds feet. That was the thing, is the guy on the ground in Vegas versus the room up top, it was 500 feet different. It's significant. So whatever the case, the ammunition the footprint on the audio file, it puts the second group and the first group not far from each other. I'm saying it could be less than 100 feet, like 60 to 100 feet maximum. That puts the tower way out of range. And then you have to contemplate how trajectory.
This is what you were talking about. This is where this is awesome, where citizen journalism comes together, because you had calculated it one way and you said it's 14%. And I had calculated it another way and I said it was just a few hundredths off. Now, when you divide 14% into 440 feet, you come up with 61.6. When you did it my way, I came up with 60 feet. So we did 2 slightly different ways and we came up with the same answer, which is, wow, whoever was firing that second group happened to have been 60 feet in a different spot, right?
Draw a little pin in a map with a string on it. Where does that lead? There's only...
There are not that many police, you have to draw an arc, a 60-foot circle around Crook's body. If we say he's shooter number 2 with the 5 grouping, if that's true, then there you go, 60 feet. Well, now we're somewhere in the AGR complex. We are in one of the other buildings. Yeah. That's all that's left.
Now, let's cover something called trajectory for a second. You seen that picture where the bullets whizzing by Trump? If you take the podium and then that line and you kind of bring them together, it has just like a 3-degree elevation, which is not, number one, it's not enough to get up to that tower. If you were trying to conceal something that you were doing, like this is a conspiracy, let's just fucking say it. Somebody's trying to kill Trump and there's multiple actors involved. You've got to deal with the trajectories not matching, right? So you can't shoot somebody from the tower and then because the shot would come in here and it'd come out their ass or somewhere else and you go, oh, it was an elevated shot. So it has to be, in order to conceal the scapegoat, you have to be shooting from behind and the same level, or excuse me, above and behind. That would give you a similar trajectory. And when you start looking around at what's 61 feet away, look, there's a window right there. The guys could look out the window and watch the fucking sniper. What were they looking at? Porn on a computer? Because we know Secret Service has a history of prostitution. That happened here in Vegas. Come on, man. Use your freaking head. That's what I love about double confirmation. And I honestly think that our judicial system should have 2 independent detectives working the same case separated from each other. I mean, if you're looking at justice, and because when you and I come to the same conclusions, that goes a long way. That goes a long way. And I think you said it earlier that they named one of the people that was sitting in that window.
Yeah, let's turn to that right, because this just came out at the time of this recording. It's been out about an hour now. We're on the roof. Crooks's body is there. They blur it out for you. We've got a black kitted up police clothed officer. We've got 3 what I call emergency service people in their camo, and we've got a Secret Service agent. And man, they name names. This is awesome.
Yes, yes. Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him. Okay.
Right there,
got it. So the bike in the back. Is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I don't know.
Treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there?
Is Greg in there? Did you hear that?
Oops. That's called dry snitching.
Oops.
Oops. Hey, you know what? Wherever the hammer falls.
Is Greg in there? But you know what we saw when we panned up? There's that open window. I needed to know, was it open? It was open.
Yeah, or a closed window.
Yeah, and you're a shooter, right? That you could have closed your eyes and hit this guy, right? I mean, it's a chip. It's 40 yards, 40 feet. I mean, it's just, how could you?
Come on, man. Come on.
So we know these guys were in that room beforehand because they took 2 pictures of Crooks from that room. We know his name was Greg now. Greg? You want to tell us about taking that picture? So we know they're in the room at the time or around the time that the shootings happened.
Actually, they're trying to say that those guys saw Crooks on the ground and abandoned their post to go look for him. Bullshit. You do not abandon your post. You call someone who's on the ground you give him a description. He's wearing a tan shirt, camo pants. He's got glasses. He looks like Shaggy. You know, identify this guy, see what he's up to. You don't abandon your post. That's the part that, you know what, they fucking deserve it. And when Cheeto loses her job over this, good. Right? Don't lie. I mean, I had such an issue with how cold and calloused she was in the whole thing. You know, people lost their lives and the buck stops with you. All you were worried about is defending yourself. You weren't worried about the people that died. You know, and that was another thing. I'm very good at reading deception. And I mean, we don't need to get into that here because we're talking about data, and we want to stay on the data side of it. But what the data is leading to, I would highly encourage the FBI to make sure they're doing the same audio forensic analysis that we're doing. And what do we have? We don't have a dog in the fight. What reason do we have to do anything other than read the data and report that that factually there were 2 rounds, 2 supersonic rounds in 2 separate volleys that were fired at slightly different distances? And what are our available options for those distances that would maintain the same trajectory as the rounds that struck Trump and several other victims? That's the math. I wanted to bring this up earlier. Do you know that they never matched the bullets found in the victims at 1 October with the guns that were found in the room to prove that there was not one or more shooters? This is the kind of bullshit we deal with. So in Vegas, man, this is not our first rodeo in dealing with, 500 people and 59 people killed in Vegas, terrorized our community, and we had to sue the sheriff 7 times in order to get any answers. And you have no idea all the missing incident reports that were just, they said, we don't know where those are, They turn the radios off so you can't listen to them. It's like, come on. That's only what people who are covering something up do. And here we have that same Potomac 2-step. And I think that justice needs to be served for Trump and for the American people. I can't imagine what our enemies would be thinking right now about this is a perfect time to attack a leader because they're in chaos. And and that's the responsibility of our Secret Service. Whoever's involved, they need to be held accountable for it. We can't just let this go with the news cycle. I'm not, and I know you're not either.
No, I can't. So first, I had the report from an audio expert out of Colorado that said, look, the 3 and the 5 are different. And then I got a hold of some audio tape, and then I got a hold of many. So I now have lots of audio files, right? Because we had people all over the place with cell cams. This is the one right now, Nephi, this is the one that broke me because like you, I haven't shot as much as you, but I've shot over 250,000 rounds at the range, and there's people at other tables shooting, and, you just get used to the sounds, and, it's just part of life, right? So when I came across this one, this is from this camera right here. I immediately said, those first 3 rounds, they don't sound like the next 5 or that last one. No,
the first group is not as loud. They maintain the same relative distance from each other. So the first group is a little muted, like in the other ones, and the second group is clearer and louder, which also could be that shot was fired from indoors. And
also the very last one that comes after the 5, it's
that's a single shot.
Muted. That last one's totally different.
The other one has a snap. Yeah, it's
snap.
Clearly those are 3 different. And that's irrefutable. So those of you watching this understand that what we've just established is unequivocally, there were more than one shooter in those first 2 groups for 2 different people. Period. And that's the foundation for why you open it up. I'll give you an example back to Vegas again. The premise of not looking for anyone else was because the alleged shooter was supposedly found dead in the room with the door locked from the inside. Case closed. But if you look in the preliminary report, that deadbolt was in, wasn't locked. In their final report, the narrative caught up with the evidence and the deadbolt was out. That would undo the whole case. And we're facing that very similar situation because we have the evidence right here in front of us. The audio is like a fingerprint. What we have is 2 fingerprints. 2 fingerprints mean 2 people involved. Period. So anybody out there, we can put this to rest. There were 2 shooters, right? I mean, do you agree with me? I bet my life on there being 2 shooters based on the evidence that we've presented.
Yes, and further, that last shot where it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, crack. I've worked a lot on that crack because one of the things I like to do, Nephi, is I challenge myself. I'm like, what if I have this wrong? What if I'm mistaking an inbound snap?
Sure, that's
science.
a
big heavy. Yeah, what if that's a big heavy round coming in? So I go downrange, and so what people? Let me just clear something else up for people too. They go, oh, but Chris, those snipers, those counter sniper guys, they were using suppressors, right? They call them silencers. I'm like, okay. It takes a 308 from 150 decibels down to about 120 decibels.
Yeah,
right?
it's not silent.
Yeah. It's not silent, right? It still is going to leave a pretty hefty pop down the other end. 120 decibels is pretty darn loud, right? It doesn't break your eardrums like an unmuffled one, but that's fine. But still, it's
it
not like... It
does sound like a suppressed shot. Remember I said it has that kind of snap to it? Remember I shot...
Wait, this one? The sixth one here? You think this is a suppressed one?
No, the last shot.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has
that
little zip.
15 seconds later.
Yeah,
that was really late.
Anything fired from, I mean, when we get the list of guns that are found in the crime scene, protocol would be to list the caliber, list if there were any accessories on the guns, any enhancing, features. All those things should come out. That's what bothers me about it is, they Secret Service says, we need 60 days to give you Come on, man. That's time for you to get your stories straight. And they said that there was, I can't remember her name, was a Democrat senator that, died right after this happened. And then they said, she was very involved in communicating with the Secret Service. I was like, another scapegoat. There's going to be a lot of people getting Clintoned in the next couple of weeks. People who knew something, you can't have loose ends. I can't imagine. And when you have somebody, look, the guy in Arizona who sold Stephen Paddock ammunition that was not legal, destroyed his business because he sold ammo. But these guys from BlackRock who got pictures with this kid, nothing happening? Where's the outrage? The buildings owned by BlackRock? I mean, these are obviously things that are, more speculative than the data we've been discussing. But my point in this, and I think every person in America, if they're paying attention even remotely, is questioning very seriously whether or not we had a conspiracy within our own government to assassinate a president of the United States.
Well, so what we have is let's establish the fact patterns we have. So we've got really good high-quality mic recordings down on Trump's end. And the good news is there weren't 8 mics up there. There was just one, so we're all working off the same feed, right? And they had one consolidated feed out, so it's basically the same. Good, okay. Then we have all these other cell phone recordings all around. And let me just dispense one other thing. It was a good point. I like being challenged. So somebody said, Chris, you don't understand. Cell phones have really highly directional mics, so if a guy's facing it this way and then he turns, of course it's going to sound different. And then an audio engineer approached me and said, well, actually your phone has a directional mic, but when you put it in video mode, it goes to an omnidirectional mic. Because, of course, you want to pick up the waves and the birds and the other people in the room, right? So, of course, we had to go and run tests. I had a guy go out, and he has both a 308 and a 223 platforms. He put microphones down there. He put cameras facing different ways, cell phones, shot them all. And you know what? You can't tell a difference based on the rotation of the phone. So that muffling we're hearing is an authentic thing. You have to reconcile that. That's a fact right now. The first 3 sound different from the next 5, which sounds different from that next one. Those are 3 separate weapons. Part 1. Part 2, we've established there's a tiny, tiny little difference in time, but it's important. There's no such thing as air doesn't travel, sound doesn't travel differently through air, from one moment to the next.
You know what might account for it, Chris? So
what's that?
If I'm engaged on something and I'm trying to run it down, right, my aggression increases when I miss. So the first one misses, I'm going to move. I'm going to, because you just naturally move closer when you start missing. So that can throw it off just a little bit, but it's within like a frog's hair. Scientifically, it's the same. It's absolutely
no, but we're missing by
scientifically the
60
same.
feet. 60 feet.
Oh, that's the difference between volley 1 and volley 2. That's
60 feet.
That's settled science. That's two different shooters. Period.
All right, so we're putting
Whatever
in the bag.
happens,
They just don't sound the same, and they aren't even they don't have the same fingerprint. So it's really the case is building, right? So
and their volume is different. The other confirmation is that the volume of the first group is less than the volume of the second group. That's another indicator. Oh, you take. I'm not on your system, so I can't pull up the screen. I can add it later. You're going to basically, you have your peaks because it was negative 14 decibels on the second shot or the first shot, and it was negative 12 on the second group. So you measure how high.
Are you taking the peaks?
Yep.
The peaks? Yeah.
Yeah, but it also matches what you're listening to. When you listen carefully, you could tell the first group is a little quieter than the second group. And so that's one, but you don't just rely on that. You got to rely on the distance too. So the loudness relative to the target, which was the microphone of Trump, is quieter than the second group. And you can hear it. So you can play it again if you want. But that's how you also confirm how far away it was, is by the loudness.
Yeah. So what I hear, again, this is just for everybody listening. This is really important.
Clearly different. Now that reminds me, if you look up the video of the cab driver at Mandalay Bay, same scenario. She's hearing, the muted sounds and then bam, 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 bam. Like, clearly it's two. Don't tell us we're stupid. That's the thing that's difficult with this, is that they're giving people things that you want to trust the government. You want to trust badges. You want to trust authority. But they keep lying to everyone and to make them question themselves. And then you got idiots out there, putting some guy on a shadow on top of that tower, on that water tower, to make people think, just to go viral, just to lead people down this rabbit hole that goes to no truth at all. Right, the idea that you would be up in that thing, that's making that little nib or nub on the top of it like more than 6 feet tall, and it's not. All right, it's baloney. We don't need crap like that out there sending people, because then they don't believe anything. Right, and I love math. I'm not naturally good at math because I'm a creative thinker, but I love math. I wish politics was mathematic, because then you could just pull something up and tell someone, shut the fuck up. Look, right, 1 + 1 is 2, right? But it's not. But with what we're dealing with, math is perfect because you can't argue with it. And so I will put this challenge out there, and I'd ask you to join me in this. Other people in this profession, audio engineers, forensic auditors, people who know this stuff, recreate our work, please. Recreate it. And if 100 people put effort into that and we all come back to the same conclusion, guess what? This investigation better not be closed when the casket of crooks is closed, like they did to us in Vegas. Oh, he's dead in the room with the door locked from the inside. Let's go home. Let's go back to your gaming. Nothing to see here. No, we're not doing it again. Tell us the friggin' truth and arrest the people responsible. The country needs that.
So one other thing just came out, and I want to get your perspective on this. So listen, every gun will eject the spent casings, the brass, differently. But since he's lying on the ground, my best guess for that particular gun, if I have the model right, and I'm guessing a little, but that spent brass ought to be 3 to 10 feet away, but probably averaging 5 to 6 feet on average to his right. Yeah?
Yep, it should be closer to those idiots in the room.
So here's the thing. This is a still from that, and there's only 2 times, frustratingly, when he swung over the right direction. But this is, so Crooks would be to back behind a little bit. He's to the right. He's over there. He's lying on the ground. But this is exactly that. This covers exactly 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock from about 4 feet to 10 feet away. I don't see a single piece of brass.
No,
I got sunlight.
I don't either.
I got good light. There's no brass on here, right? But they're going to say later, "Oh, we picked it up," which of course you wouldn't do. But if you did, you'd leave that little plastic. You'd leave the little yellow plastic hat. I mean, the blood is still fresh. It's still red in this picture. This is like right afterwards. In fact, I can see the guy's phone when he looks at it at one point. It says 7:03. 7:03.
Oh, yeah.
So this is less than an hour later. Because the first bullets flew at 6:13, right? So we're 50 minutes later, and they're going to say they already picked the brass up and forgot to put the little evidence markers down. Get out of here.
What for? Why would you pick it up? That's like, look, I'll put this up there. I don't want to start no more shit, but I'll put the picture of the 2 deadbolts that are supposed to be the same photo. One deadbolt's out, the other one's in. That's the kind of shenanigans that happens. There's too many coincidences in this whole thing that are just being pathetically explained away like we're stupid. And we're not. We're not stupid, and more people who, can add insight into this, we welcome that, because the objective at the end of the day is for us to get down to the truth, make sure that we get justice for Trump, and make sure that other of our leaders are protected from this kind of infiltration. It's
a tall order, but we got to prove the case, and that this really bothers me that I'm sitting here, 9 days after the event, right? And we're still here glancing, scrutinizing like a shaky ass, helmet cam to see if we can see brass. We should have had pictures of the brass day one, right? Crime scene photo. Yeah. Here's the perp. Here's the exact gun he used. Click, click, click. Here's all the spent brass lying around. It adds up. The bullets, the everything matches. Instead, somebody's going to have to FOIA this helmet cam, the complete helmet cam, because I don't want just these 3 minutes. I want to see the first guy walking on scene. I need that footage, right? Oh no, this will be some, what excuse are they going to use, Nephi?
Out of respect for the dead, his body cam defaulted, or whatever it is. Whenever that happens, just know that there's a lie somewhere in that conversation. And I would expect that we'll get treated the same way that we did in the Mandalay Bay shooting. But the thing I am most positive about is 2 reasons. Number one, we got a clean sample this time. We have the most important evidence in the case, and that is we got 2 fingerprints. The second thing is that they just shot at our next president. And he's not going to let that shit go.
I hope not.
Hell no. You saw what song he played. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is really important because it was a good quality mic. It was stationary, and it was right where the action was.
It's a perfect sample.
Be able to very, very cleanly understand what happened.
Yeah. So I think at this stage in our conversations, and obviously you and I are going to stay on it, and we're going to continue to press that, challenging others to get involved and get build on what we've done, all right, and make sure that we keep the pressure on, so that we have enough research that those investigating this case have to tell the truth. And I think that's an important thing. Look, we're on our own out here, and we got to take care of each other. And, if somebody else isn't willing to do what's right, then we need to be willing to do what's right. But I think it was important that we first establish, there were definitely 2 shooters at different distances. So that's established. The second, and I want to just kind of wrap it up with this, is that no one was shooting at President Trump from that water tower. It's just from
Correct.
the data that you and I have and the trajectories and the rounds that are accounted for, none of the math reaches that. The 3-degree angle that bullet was from the podium can't reach that tower. The Secret Service director, who was just resigned, Cheadle, she said that they did not have anyone on that tower. And that was a critical piece of evidence that she should have said, I'll have to get back to you on that one. But she didn't say that. She definitively said, we didn't. So she's going to have receipts for that. It's a theory that people need to stop looking at. It didn't happen. Yes, it's an elevated position. But there's nobody standing on top of that thing. It's not that big, right? And the little shadow peeking out before that is not consistent with a shooter. It's just the math's not there. So let's just call that busted. You
Good.
agree?
That's busted. I agree. And the other thing I can bust, at least I'm pretty satisfied, is people are also questioning, was that actually Crooks? They're throwing out another name. Maybe it could be somebody else, And he's got
Whoever it was is a scapegoat.
very, very distinctive ear ridges, right? He has these deformations on his right rim, like these, like some kind of like little pointy things. Very distinctive. They match. They line up. I'm good with that. As well, this is the part that really derails a lot of people. They're like, oh, there was this woman behind the podium who we think was seen at, some FBI event or something like that. That facial recognition stuff, I always put that way on the back burner because it's way too. We all have doppelgangers. No. You can't tell. It's just it's really hard. So it's not something worth really burrowing into, I don't think, at this stage. Personally,
I don't either. I think that we're going to get to the bottom of it, and I know that when Trump gets into office, he's going to make sure that people are looking into his own case properly, and we're not going to stop looking. But what's important for people to take away from this, and we'll do more of these as more information becomes available for us to dig into, to establish the fact that there's not a single shooter theory here. It's a fact that there were more than one shooter at very close distance from each other with similar trajectories and angles. And to put to rest the idea that somebody shot into that crowd with Trump from that water tower. Didn't happen. So
good.
We'll do more of this, but I just think we need to continue to verify things that we get and focus on what we can prove.
Absolutely. It has to be about what we can prove. So keep digging. I'll keep digging. And anybody who wants to challenge this, please do. There's always alternative explanations. We get better with the challenges. I do. Because I just want the truth, Nephi. I just want to know what happened, and I don't want this to happen again. And I want my country back, right? This isn't it. Like, if I want this kind of action, well, I can't even go to El Salvador. They've cleaned up their act. Like, you got to go somewhere really darker to get this kind of like action. Like, you do not take shots at the former president, probably future president, right? You just don't.
No.
That's not okay. It's just not okay. It's just not.
Well, Chris, I appreciate everything you're doing, man.
Thanks. And just in case somebody's watching who has access to the that first helmet cam coming up on the roof, we need that footage, buddy. We need it. We need everything.
Yeah, as I brought it up earlier, that thing on Netflix, Don't Mess with Cats. Mm-hmm. Right, we need that kind of enthusiasm because there were 13,000 witnesses. And you know what they did in Vegas? The FBI took everybody's cell phone from the 1 October and they deleted everything off their phones. Why?
Mm-hmm. That's why I told people, if they come for your phone, upload it to the cloud first, and because it's coming back scrubbed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, we're going to do this again soon,
right.
And I appreciate everything you're doing, brother. But thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you, and thanks for weighing in here. All right, with that, we'll see you later. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.